Did you hear that?
Yes.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
Terrific, terrific.
Okay.
Well, it's great to see you.
You too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been very long. I was sitting here thinking, when was the last time I saw you? And of course, it's a little scary when I think about how fast time goes by, because I think the last time I saw you would have been a year or two before the pandemic hit.
Yeah, I think so. Well, when did we film Earth Mom? 2017?
I think that was 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would have had the screening for it over at
Oh,
the Chinese theater
that's right. That's the last time I
complex.
saw it.
Yeah,
Yes.
so whenever that was, and I believe we did very well that night in terms of the audience really liked the show.
Yeah, we had a big turnout and we won audience favorite.
Yeah,
Great
yeah,
night.
not a bad thing. That was a real fun show to work on. And before I get into that, let me do my official introduction. This is the Dave Bean as a C-list actor Zoomcast with my very special guest, a screenwriter, author, and all-around talented guy, Christopher Brian Halvorson. And for those of us that know him, we get to call him Chris. So welcome to the Zoomcast, Chris.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. It's great. It is great to see you, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Yeah, so as we were just talking about, you and I worked together on a project. It was Earth Mom. It was a television pilot. It was a comedy, and I've been blessed that I've done a whole bunch of pilots, comedy pilots. Uh, Almost none of which have ever gone to series, but at least I got to do them. But I have to say that Earth Mom was really enjoyable, really fun. It's a great bunch of characters that you and John wrote there, uh, and uh, and I had an awful lot of fun doing it. So if I never, hopefully I told you that in the past, but
You
anyway, I'm
did.
telling you now.
You did.
Yeah, good,
Yeah.
very good.
We got a hot streak of that particular week, which was unfortunate. If you remember, in September, and the air conditioning was not working in the house, which was
Yeah,
unfortunate. But we got through it.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well, I especially remember the rehearsals because first of all, you don't always have the luxury of rehearsing these things, especially if it's, a 30-minute or 22-minute sitcom or whatever. You don't usually have the luxury of rehearsing, but you were so meticulous in your planning because in addition to writing this, you also produced it. And we got at least a few days worth of rehearsals. I know I wasn't in on every single one of them. I wasn't necessary um, for them, but it was great showing up. We had some great food to eat, courtesy of your lovely
Roya,
Roya, who was,
yes, you
yeah,
got
yeah,
some Persian cooking on that.
yeah, yeah. These are the things that I remember about being on set is whether or not the food was good.
I
You
think the
know,
catering was the best part of the series, maybe.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. To that end, even when we were shooting at that house in Santa Monica, I remember the scene that I was in. Everybody was eating, and we were eating like spaghetti and meatballs, like a pasta dinner. And I remember that we ordered out from a particularly good, it wasn't just your usual set, okay, we just need some prop food. No, the gang is going to be eating this, so let's have some really good food. And we brought in some really good food. And knowing that it was good food, I think I skipped the actual dinner or lunch that we had before that, so I could do take after take and actually really eat the food.
We starve our cast, so you're motivated to want to eat. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I remember walking down in the scene and like plucking food off of people's plates as part of the character.
Oh, that's
And,
right.
yeah, and just in case anybody watching knows, you don't actually disappear into your character. So the part of me that was the character was doing the character shtick that he was supposed to do, but the part of me that's Dave and just loves to eat was like, hey, let's do a few more takes of this so I can eat a few more meatballs off of these people's plates. So anyway, that was a lot of fun. So Chris, where did you grow up?
Seattle area, Renton, Washington, which
Oh,
is kind
okay.
of kind of like the it's South Seattle basically. It's sort of the Seahawks. It's known for the Seahawks camp.
Right. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
When I was a
Seahawks are
kid, it
very
was in Kirkland actually. The Seahawks were in Kirkland, which was the rich side of town, and Renton was
okay.
always kind of the armpit. We got made fun of for growing up in Renton. And we have
Oh,
little
okay.
Seattle jokes, like we'd make fun of the Kirkland and Bellevue, the East Side people. Like, how does a mom in Bellevue call her kid to the dinner table and get in the car, honey? Those jokes. But yeah, Renton
Absolutely.
always got made fun of. So when we got the Seahawks camp, it was a big moment in Renton, Washington. So look at
Yeah.
us. Wow, we got the elite Seahawks now. So
That's very cool. And were you or are you a Seahawks fan? Are you a football fan?
oh yeah, I'm diehard Seahawks.
Oh,
Yeah.
great, great, great. Terrific. Well, so you got to experience, I believe, a Super Bowl. My hometown, Detroit Lions. And
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah,
I was pulling for them. I think they became America's team during the playoffs.
yeah, that was very nice. That was very nice to see because of course I don't even know how many Thanksgivings I spent at the Pontiac Silverdome. I'm now dating myself, watching the Lions lose to the Bears on Thanksgiving. But kind of like the Chicago Cubs, where the fans at one point until they won the World Series, but were used to these lovable losers and supporting them all the way. Lions fans, we just never had any expectations that we were going to do very good.
Hmm.
So it was great. It was great to see them at least make this run and very, very impressive.
Yeah,
So
but that game was brutal though. You guys should have won that.
woulda,
Yeah,
shoulda, coulda,
yeah, yeah.
I'm always of the mind, especially when it's a one game deal, which is NFL playoffs is like on any given Sunday, you know any team can win any team, but it's one play can make all the difference in the play calls and things like that. But I could go on and talk with you all day. Now that I know, I'm not sure that I knew you were a football fan. Yeah, I'm
I
all
didn't
around.
I didn't know you were either. And I for some reason I was thinking you were from Boston area, New York, somewhere on the East Coast. I didn't realize it was Detroit.
Or well, originally I was born in Boston, but I moved to Michigan when I was a wee lad. I was like 8 years old.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
Yeah. So and so yeah. So I mean baseball first, last, and always as a sports guy. But I'm pretty much one of those guys who just loves all sports. I to this day, right before you and I got on this, I was shooting hoops over at the community center, and tomorrow I'm playing soccer. I'm a guy who just loves to get out there and still mix it up. So
That's
yeah,
great.
all around,
That's
yeah, just an
great.
all around sports guy. Now, when you're growing up in the Seattle area, what was there an epiphany at some age where you saw a movie or read a book? Because I know that you've written a novel, you've written screenplays. So writing is obviously your thing, but was there something that you saw that kind of sparked that creative vibe inside of you? And what was that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's one particular thing, but
Yeah,
as far as movies, probably Spielberg. I was probably 8 or 9 when Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out.
right, right.
I was kind of a weird kid. I liked to play basketball, but I was also very introverted. I was read a lot in my room. And
Yeah,
there
yeah.
was a series of books called The Three Investigators. It was a kid series. Alfred Hitchcock presents The Three
Oh,
Investigators. And
wow.
huge, huge series that ran from like the 60s all the way probably through the 70s. And then,
Right,
I was growing up really in the 80s. They were still popular. I won't call it, you can't call a book a rerun, but they were still on the shelves in a lot of school
right.
libraries and a lot of kids read them. And they were really well written. And I really, that's what got me interested in reading so much as a kid. Even as a kid, I was thinking, what am I going to do someday? I mean, I kind of knew I wasn't going to be a pro. I wasn't going to go play for the Sonics,
Right,
our
right,
former
right.
team, which RIP, now
Yeah,
Oklahoma.
sure, sure.
Um, but it's I knew that even like at 10 years old. I knew that either one was going to be a very hard field to make it in. But I kind of wrote off
Right,
basketball. I mean, I'm 5'9" now. I kind of knew I wasn't going to sprout up much taller than that. So I figured, well, I got
yeah,
a better chance at writing. So I knew this at
right,
10 years old. These are only two things in life I really enjoy.
yeah, yeah.
So anyway, that's probably what put me on the
Oh,
path.
very, very cool. So yeah, so this is interesting because of course when we were working together, especially since you were writer, producer, and I was producer, actor, so we didn't really have time for like Dave and Chris time to go deep on this stuff. But yeah, I had a similar sort of a thing where, I ran not certainly not an introvert, but I was an actor slash athlete. And the guys that I played sports with, they would look at me like kind of funny. They're like, so you're going to go from the ball field and now you're going to go over to the theater and suit up in whatever costume. Just didn't make sense to them. And some of the guys were like, as you were like a little hostile about it. I could never understand the hostility, just because you had like, multiple things going on, as I would refer to it now, as multiple gifts, not judging myself or, in terms of how good I was at either one, but at least I had like a creative vibe and an athletic vibe, and I loved them both equally, and as I still do. So you kind of had a similar sort of thing where you've got the love of athletics, and the love of literature. So I mean, to me, that's very cool. So did you think at that time that, okay, one of these days I'm going to write the great American novel or a novel or a book or something?
It's funny you said that. I entered a short story contest in sixth grade, and I didn't even make the finalists. They had like five finalists. They
Ah,
had
well,
and which is a horrible idea for kids to do that because you have five winners and you have 30 losers, and I was
yeah,
just
yeah,
crushed.
yeah,
And then I remember even in high school, I was still reading novels at that point, but kind of lost interest. You
yeah,
change in your teenage years. I like what you just said. I was more in with the basketball crowd, and
yeah,
it is a
yeah,
different culture. It's interesting what you just said. It's a culture that frowns upon the arts, and you get
yes,
into that
yes,
crowd and you want to be the cool guy. We were drinking beer and doing
yep,
that kind of crowd, and it's like
yep,
it's almost sissified to be interested in acting or writing or anything that's art related. And
yeah,
but I think then I didn't go to college till I was later, 23 years old. So there's this period where I was working in Parks and Rec and not really sure what I was
mhm,
going to do with my life. But I was still
right,
reading. I remember I read The Godfather around that time, and
great,
Gone with the Wind, and all these classic
beautiful,
modern novels, and thinking, God, how can anyone write three or 400 pages? How can they get
yeah,
a plot to carry that far? I didn't think that was possible. And
right,
then I got into college, and my original plan was to go to law school. I figured I'd get a writing or journalism degree
right,
and go to law school. And then I got into a creative writing class and realized that this kind of felt like a calling. And but even then, how do you structure a novel? And it just
yeah,
comes with
yeah,
time. It
yeah.
just comes with time and doing the prep work, writing an outline, figuring out where your main plot points are. But anyway, try to give you a shorter answer.
No, 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 it's great, it's
That was
great.
the approach. So I don't know if I told you
So,
I had a novel published last year, Caitlin's
eh,
Wheel, Bancroft
Caitlin's,
Press.
okay, fantastic. Repeat that again because I think I was talking.
Caitlin's Wheel,
Yeah,
Bancroft Press, a small indie, actually a top 10 indie publisher. They published
fantastic.
Caitlin's Wheel. It's a teen romance, supernatural romance,
That's
which
wow. That's terrific. So is Caitlin's Wheel and that kind of sci-fi supernatural teen genre? Is that kind of what you feel is like your wheelhouse in terms of writing, or is this just like one genre you were choosing to explore? And
I
they're
think
they're
this
they're
was, yeah, I think it's a one-time shadow. It's a tribute to Close Encounters, really.
oh wow, okay,
Yeah, it's about a girl who sees a UFO over her house the night her father dies of cancer, and he's in the house when he dies. And so it makes her. She's from a Midwest town, small Midwest town, where
right, right,
they're fairly religious and
yeah,
conservative, and she knows that there's a passage in the Old Testament where Ezekiel was taken by a UFO and shown the mountain, which was God's mountain. So Ezekiel's wheel is literally a UFO. It's in Old Testament. Some religions believe in that, some don't. It's
right, right, right.
this is taking this and applying it to fiction, but so she wonders, does this have something to do with Ezekiel's will? Did he come and take my father to basically the other side?
Right.
And that's the setup for the story. So, but very heavily inspired by close encounters. There's no doubt about it. So
That's I think, see, that's terrific. Is there any thought that you might want to adapt that to as like a motion picture? Is that something that is kicking around in the back of your
thank you
mind?
for asking, Dave. I wrote it as a pilot, and
No
and
idea, but that, yeah.
yeah, yeah, I
Wow.
wrote it as a pilot and put together the pitch deck. And Story Media Group, who they represent, I forgot the guy's name, Vince Gillian, the guy who did Breaking Bad and
Oh yeah,
Bill
Vince
X-Files.
Gilligan. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
They package and broker books to movies or books to TV. They're actually
Right, right.
representing. I signed a representation agreement with them, and it's been a while. I
Fantastic.
haven't heard anything, but hopefully they're out shopping it and they'll get some traction
Hopefully,
on this. So
hopefully. That is kind of the nature of the business, as you know, and as I know, is like you could get yourself representation, and then all of a sudden you feel like, well, what did I get representation for? I never hear from these people. And we don't,
yeah,
and then all of a
yeah,
sudden you can get the phone call. It's usually the good news usually comes by the phone call. The not so good news usually comes either by dead silence or an email from an assistant or something like that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but
Isn't that so true? Yeah,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm always excited when I get the manager or other reps for when I see I'm putting in my phone when I see the thing pop up on the phone because I'm okay. Get a phone call. Phone call is usually going to be the good news, unless you have a particularly sensitive and human agent, which they're out there, but they're fewer and far between. They want to know that they can make cash on the barrelhead.
yeah.
With whatever there's up. But anyway, that's terrific. What a great thing. Now in so you went back to college a little later than a lot of folks did, although I didn't go back later, but it took me 6 years to get through my the undergrad world anyway, because I was so distracted by sports and girls and a little bit of partying, not much. But I didn't know, like I had no idea really. I wanted to act. So I did some plays when I was in college, but I was a history major, not thinking, I was just doing the plays and thinking, well, just kind of hang out with the theater, crew from time to time, and I can get my acting fixed that way. But it's really nothing that I'd ever want to pursue. And then eventually I just said, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. And that's what I did there. But you ended
That's
up, I
cool.
mean, you ended up at a great school. I mean, you have followed in what my mind is a legacy of a lot of writers, particularly comedy writers, who've honed their writing chops at Ivy League schools. You were at Columbia, right?
Columbia for grad school. I went to the University of North Alabama for undergrad.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right, right,
it
right.
was cheap. I could live in Alabama for peanuts compared to what Seattle costs.
Yeah,
Literally, four
absolutely.
years was the same cost as 1 year in Seattle. So it was a
Yeah,
no-brainer.
amazing, just amazing. So now, were you in a writing program there, or was that pre-law? I think you mentioned you were thinking about becoming
Yeah,
a
I went
lawyer.
there just thinking I just need to get it. My dad's a lawyer. He says it doesn't really matter. Just you get
Right,
history, writing, political science. Writing is the most
right,
important skill you can have as a writer. It's not like TV where you're, Perry Mason having these great debates in the courtroom. Almost everything we
right,
do is writing briefs and preparing questions for depositions, which is all written.
right,
So
right.
yeah, I went in and I was going to do journalism, and then they had a program called professional writing, and I figured, oh, this covers more of all elements of writing. It seems a little more interesting, so I ate up
Hmm.
that and went history as well. Like you, I double majored actually,
Yeah, yeah,
just because I liked history. Just picked up those classes
yeah.
and uh, and then after that, I got through that in about 3.5 years, and then I went to Columbia like 3 years later. So I was 30 when I started grad school at Columbia. I was a little older there too. I was about 5 years older than everybody, but I
Yeah,
didn't feel like super old. There were older people than me too.
of
So
course, of
there were
course.
people in their 40s that were in the program. So um,
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that you realize, like when I first started college, and then I realized that, oh, geez, it's going to take me 5 years to graduate or 6 years. By that time, I realized, oh, you know what? When I was a kid, I thought this is a race between me and my buddies to get through school because we're all going to be having lives together on the same block, and I better keep up with them. But then you realize, no, this is my journey. This is my timeline that I get to matriculate on, and you clearly the exact same thing. And was Columbia a real fulfilling experience for you?
To be totally honest, if there are
Please.
any young listeners out there, feel free to email me. I
Right.
had 3 or 4 great workshops with
Yeah.
really good, successful in the entertainment business writers. Dan
Right.
Sullivan,
Right.
who wrote While You Were Sleeping, was one of them. We're still in
Wow.
contact to this day. I learned a lot from him. He was very encouraging. Charlie
Fantastic.
Rubin, who was writing for Seinfeld at the time, or he just finished writing for Seinfeld. He'd written for Letterman. He was still in the industry
Right.
after
Right.
I think right after I had him as my instructor, he went on to write and produce for Law and Order and became their showrunner. So, or their head
Wow.
producer. He was terrific. He was tough, but he was
Yeah.
a great instructor. He didn't
Right.
pull any punches. He would tell you, hey,
Right.
this isn't working. You need to do this. But it was tough love
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
great instructor. Janet Roach, who won an Oscar for adaptation of Prizzy's Honor as a
Oh,
screenwriter,
wow. Okay.
tough. She was
Yeah.
hard nosed. I mean, there were
Yeah.
days you dread going to class because you know you're going to get the hell beat out of you. But she was great. I still use her 10 rules of writing to this day. If something's not working, I pull it up.
Yeah.
Roach's 10 rules of writing. Why isn't this piece not working? And
Right.
I go
Right.
back to that. Those 3, there were probably one. I had another TV writer guy who was great. I'm blanking on his name. So I had 4 great classes.
Right. Right. Right.
And the other guy was also writing industry. Unfortunately, I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But uh, unfortunately, for the cost of going to Columbia and what I got out of it, I can't say it really justified the money.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it's not like anybody was hiring right out of the program. Oh, you went to Columbia, come work for us.
Right. Right.
Honestly, I think going to like UCLA Extension, I could have
Right.
gotten really good workshops with professional writers at a
Right. Right.
fraction of the cost. And
Right.
still, really, the best thing I would suggest to people who are thinking of film school is the best thing you're going to get out of it is an internship. And that's really what you need to do. And I should have done that, and I didn't do that.
Right. Right.
Go
Right.
intern. That's how you're going to get in the industry. You're going to start out as somebody's reader or assistant or whatever, and you're going to have to go through the grind of a few years, and that's going to help you as a writer if and finding time to write while working in an office all those hours. But
Right. Right. Yeah,
yeah,
that's pretty sage advice. Um, and even yeah, no, obviously those internships, very, very valuable. A lot of, somewhat controversial these days. We won't dive too far into it because of course a lot of those folks, whether starting out as an assistant or an intern, I mean, you pretty much have to have some kind of an income stream other than what they're paying you to live in Los Angeles or New York and do that sort of thing. But if you could get in the door, I think that's the key. And I think that's one of the things that I found out perhaps you did is that ultimately you need to have some kind of relationship with somebody who really believes that you've got the chops, who will open that door for you and at least get you in the door. Then you've got to stay in on your own, but at least, get you in the door. At least that's my experience. Um, although much, much of what I've done is ended up doing because I was fortunate to get in many different doors. I was not fortunate enough to stay in the big league doors for very long, but by that time I'd figure out how to kind of produce things on my own. And I thought, well, if I'm really gonna, you know, put most of my time and most of my life into this, I'm gonna have to do pretty much my own projects. And again, that didn't come till relatively late in life as well. So it's probably been about 10 years now that I've just pretty much been doing my own projects every now and again, dipping into somebody else's project if they'd have me. Um, but eventually, you were able to. So when was it? When was it that you came out to Los Angeles then, Chris? How did
wow,
that
it
happen?
was right before 9/11. What
Oh
year was that?
wow,
That was 2000, what, 2002?
2001. Yeah,
2001.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. 9/11
Yeah.
01.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I moved out here and then 9/11 happened. It was like horrible timing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I
yeah.
mean,
Get
even
good
the
old.
industry was affected by that. They didn't know what they wanted to make. It was just
Yeah,
panic across the country, panic across the media. I remember,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, I had an action movie that had a gun involved, and it was actually getting some interest. And because of 9/11, it just killed it because, oh, we
Oh
can't have
my.
anybody with a gun in public, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
so
yeah. That always reminds me. I've directed a number of shows where we had guns, and I may have, I think I mentioned this on another episode with somebody, but to me, it's always fascinating when I would have actors either in an LAPD uniform or playing a detective, and they would have guns, and then they would inevitably want to walk across the street and go to the Starbucks. And I would say, hold on here.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's where
yeah.
I learned, you know what? Before every when I do, my safety meeting beforehand, letting folks know, if we're any kind of anybody's in danger for any, if we're using any live fire, or if we have even prop firearms, even if you have like um, a fully rubber, a hunk of rubber that's been molded to look like a gun, still you have to do a safety meeting to let people know that it's not anything that is even capable of firing. However, if you're an actor and you've been given this to use in a scene, as soon as we say cut, you got to give that back to the prop guy. You can't go walking around with it, and you can't walk across the street with it in a holster to go to the Starbucks, because we don't want to end up a cautionary tale, but anyway,
Yes. Hey, Dave, I think a prosecutor might be calling you as an expert witness in Alec Baldwin's trial.
well,
Oh.
yeah, and that's, of course, as we're talking about this, you and I, and probably anybody watching this, are thinking the same thing. And here I am now living in New Mexico with actor friends of mine who worked on the set, and and were there on the day when that terrible
Oh,
tragedy
you know
happened.
actors who were actually
Yeah,
there on set.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Oh,
and
how horrific.
one of the actors. I won't mention his name. I'll leave that to him. But he's an actor who ends up being called upon by the media to kind of be, now let's talk with an actor who was there on the day or on the set, get his, 2 cents in there. So he tends to be on camera a lot, probably more than his acting. And
Yeah.
but that whole story, of course, being that, I'm located in the Albuquerque Santa Fe area. That is you know, what's the word I'm thinking of? The zeitgeist, and anything that happens creatively, inevitably somebody brings that horrible tragedy up. Yeah, but it's so as I'm watching, everybody giving their 2 cents about what they think happened, and now, of course, that they're actually going to go to court, um, seemingly, with Alec Baldwin. I'm always thinking, I just think about my show, Mrs. Fitzgerald, and even when we would, and again, well, I ordered up a couple of replica 45 caliber guns to be used because we had lots of cops, lots of detectives, and
Hmm.
lo and behold, if the guy delivering it handed me the 2 cases, and I opened up the cases, and I was like, these are not replicas, these are actual 45 caliber guns.
You're kidding me.
The right. So I was like, and this was the night before we were going to shoot and use them. So what I quickly did was, the filmmaker in me thought, they're real. Think about that. They're real. They'll really play on camera. So I quickly called a prop master that I knew, had him rustle up very quickly some replicas, because I think I needed 6 to 8 guns on this shoot, on this day. Got those guns, which were replicas. They were plastic and hunks of rubber. And what I did was I utilized the real gun for my character. Um, but however, of course, meaning I took full, well, since I was the producer of the whole show, I had to take responsibility for anything anyway. So
Yes.
so I made like quadruple, double it short, especially since I was going to be the one handling the weapon. I did the safety meeting, showed everybody, took the clip out, showed it was an empty clip. This is what you do in a safety meeting with a gun, and then opened it up, showed there was none in the chamber, and just to be sure, pulled the trigger like into the ground or something like that. And I know somebody will call and say, "Yeah, you're not supposed to do that," So, but I was going on the instruction that I had at that time. There's nothing in the chamber or anything. Put the clip back in and we did the scene. But I got to tell you, as long as I held on to that gun before I gave it back to the armorer who provided it, I did not have I had a couple of nights where I did not sleep very well, just
I
knowing
can
that I had,
imagine. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I can
yeah,
imagine.
yeah. So, but that educated me that the next time I had to do a gun order, I made sure that make sure it's a replica. Make sure it's a replica. I mean, I don't know, are you sure you're sending me a replica? I want to see it in writing and it's a replica, and never had that experience ever again. So,
That's amazing that they sent real guns. I would imagine those are a lot more expensive as well. It doesn't even make sense.
you know what? And that's, you know, there's the good and bad. I know what happened in retrospect. I know what happened. It was, you form these friendships in our industry, and somebody who knew me, who was getting it from his supplier, said, "I think Dave would appreciate, because he wants reality." I was, I try to be all about reality
I
in my
gotcha.
shows,
Yeah.
and I think, and he was right. That's why when I opened the thing up, at first I was horrified. It's a real gun, but then all of a sudden I fell in love with it as a filmmaker. I'm like, this is just going to look so great on screen. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it is not an unusual. It's now, of course, now it would be, but at that time, pre-rust, pre-pandemic, even, not unusual. So, anyway, listen, I hope for the best. What do you say about the rust situation? I mean, it's terrible that they have to go through that, but we've digressed. So, so what was it that brought you to Los Angeles, Chris?
The industry to be a
Yeah,
screenwriter. Yeah.
yeah. So did you have something to come out to LA to go to, or was it, like a lot of us who were like, there's LA, and at the time, and it's no longer true. But at the time, when you came out, certainly when I came out in the '80s, if you wanted to work in the film and TV industry, you had to go to LA. So were you feeling like, did you have a particular project or a person that you knew who was going to open a door, or was it just like, I'm just going to go out there and go for it?
Um, a little of both. I had a couple contacts. Dan Sullivan, the guy who wrote While You Were Sleeping, who I mentioned earlier, who was my
Yeah.
instructor, he sent me to Arthur Sarkisian, who produced While You Were Sleeping, and also he was hot at the time with the Rush Hour movies. I think Rush Hour 2 was coming out,
Wow. Okay.
and he was interested in my script, a rom com I had written, and I met with him, and never went anywhere. I don't think he got the right attachments to get it made, but that was a big incentive because I knew I was going to get a meeting with him by coming out to
Yeah.
LA, and I knew
Yeah.
I had to move out here as anyway,
Right.
and
Right. Right.
I wasn't afraid of picking up the phone and calling people, so I was able to get some meetings, but my writing wasn't there yet as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it
What,
was.
when would you say that you felt like your writing was there? Was that the boondoggle, or was that, you know, w-
Yeah, probably around that time. I mean, you know how it is too. You can be a good writer, but not have what the industry wants too. And
right.
it's
Right.
unfortunately, let's be honest, if you want to get a movie made, it has to be both. I
Right.
had some
Right.
good scripts prior to the Boondoggle, but they just weren't grasping that
Yeah.
attention. And
Yeah.
then the Boondoggle, CAA jumped on it. I had a manager at the time who was able to get it to CAA, and then boom,
Beautiful.
next thing we know, Joe Roth is our producer, and
Big
we're
league.
we're in the trades, and
Yeah.
that was spectacular, but unfortunately due to some bad packaging, it didn't get made. So it,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Now let me ask you, and you don't have to name specifics here, but what constitutes what would make a bad package? What in this,
no, I'm not afraid of upsetting anybody by just telling
okay,
how it happened. It was a hot script. I mean,
yeah,
people wanted it.
right,
Owen Wilson's company was interested, and for some reason, the people at Joe Roth, Joe Roth had a few executives that that we're
right,
working with, and for some reason they weren't that interested in Owen at the time. Maybe he had cooled off. This was maybe
yeah,
4 or 5 years after Wedding Crashers. He was kind of in a
oh,
cooler period.
yeah, yeah,
I know that my manager had met with his producer at New Line. They had a little office there. They had a first look deal
right,
at New Line, and I don't think that meeting went so well. I think she thought the script needed to be reworked for him specifically, and I don't think that Joe Roth people thought so. So that was a little schism there. I know that they had given it to Vince Vaughn's production company, and Vince was still he was big at the time. I mean,
wow,
he
yeah,
was green light material.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure,
yeah, and also Vince, unfortunately, they didn't give him enough time to read it before they already made another casting decision. I think they gave up on him. And then
yeah,
later we found out that, yeah, he wanted to do it, but they'd already attached two lesser name actors that
um,
CAA, because, even the agents at CAA were competing to get their guys on board.
right,
And
right, right,
so Roth attached a couple of smaller names thinking that it could still work, and it might have. But here's what
yeah,
the real problem was. I'll just tell you how it happened. Thomas
okay,
Lennon and Rob Riggle were the two actors that CAA got on board, and Joe Roth initially said, "Well, I can't get a green light with these guys." And at the time, we already had interest from Warner Brothers. There,
right,
Jesse Ehrman, who was like their big decision. I think he's VP of production. He was their big decision maker. He already read the script. He told Joe Roth, "Get me a director and a star, and I'll make this." And that's when CAA really was pushing to get their people on board. Meanwhile,
right,
Vince Vaughn has the script, but we hadn't heard anything back. Now he's not with CAA; he was with UTA at the time, so he was kind
right,
of outside Joe Roth was with CAA, so you know how the politics work. But
yes,
so anyway, what happened was CAA they told Joe, because Joe's initial response, I can't use Thomas Lennon and Rob Riggle. And they said, well, just let these two guys come read for you. They're really funny. They have a great, so they go down and they did a reading
right,
for him and they had him laughing.
right,
And he said,
right, right,
okay, you guys are great. I'm gonna give you a shot. And he actually talked to, this is all hearsay from my manager, but that Roth had
right,
talked to Jesse Ehrman at Warner Brothers and Jesse says, yeah, we like Thomas Lennon. He wrote Night at the Museum, which I believe was a Warner Brothers release. Obviously, he's a writer too as well. Thomas Lennon is
yeah,
an A-list writer
right,
on
right,
top of
right,
being an actor who's been in a lot of stuff. He was in
right.
what was that? Reno 911. He played Lieutenant. What was that character with the short shorts? Anyway,
Yeah, was
um,
yes,
so
yes,
yeah,
very
so
funny.
he's kind of I don't want to say B actor, but he's more of a supporting star, as was
Right,
Lennon at
right,
the time and still is.
yeah,
So okay, well this could still work. And I remember my manager was really excited, more so than I was. I had a bad
right,
feeling about this. I really did. And then what's worse is they said, well, Thomas Lennon wants to rewrite your script. And I'm like, well, okay. And so he
yeah,
rewrites it. And he
right.
basically turns it into the hangover. He sets it up like the hangover where these
Oh
guys wake up
wow,
not knowing how they got to this wherever. And I'm like, what? This is the hangover 3 he's writing. So guess what happens? Jesse Ehrman at Warner Brothers now says, well, now you're writing. They were coming out with the Hangover 2 or 3 at the
right,
time.
right,
Hangover 2
right,
was coming out. He tells Joe Roth, well, I'm not going to produce a Hangover spinoff to compete with my own product
right,
because we're
right,
doing
right.
a franchise. And now you've got the Hangover. And now Thomas Lennon being an A-list writer, you can't
Right.
just get rid of him.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so now guess what? Warner Brother folds. We're out. So now they go shopping it at every studio in town. They go to
yeah,
meetings. They
yeah.
take the actors. They go to the meetings. They Universal, Fox, you name it,
Right.
Paramount, every single one. We can't make a movie with these two stars. We're not. We can't
Mm.
justify the budget.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
big budget comedy like The Hangover or
right.
Probably
Yeah,
more expensive than Wedding Crashers actually because it's takes place on
right.
this overseas island and it's big budget. But
Yeah,
anyway, So then what happens is Nala Films gets involved. Now Nala is based in Mexico. The guy who owns it's kind of like the Ted Turner in Mexico, and
Right.
he says, "Well, I can do this like on $10 million, and we'll do it as a lower budget project. We'll have to write the script down." And Thomas Lennon and Rob Riggle were okay with that. They actually worked on the script together.
Right.
Yeah, we can write. So they toned it down, and I think they wrote a part for. They had a small part for Will Ferrell. He was on board as like a
Great.
cameo. One for
Yeah.
Amy, crap, some actress. I forgot. She
Amy
was hot for that
Schumer.
role.
Amy
Schumer.
Schumer.
Yeah, she was going to do a small
Yeah, she's
cameo
great.
role.
She's
Or not
great.
a cameo. She's going to play a small part. So they agreed
Right.
put a part. So yeah, okay, we can justify 10 million now. Well,
Right.
get this one. So now we have Steve Carr attached to direct. He had done Paul Blart Mall Cop, and he's done a lot
Right.
of big family films and stuff. He wanted to
Sure.
get out of family films and do something more cutting edge, like Hangover or Wedding Crashers. So this was a
Right. Right.
great project for him to get involved. We had financing. We made the trades that this was going into production. Uh, so Steve Carr goes down to scout locations with my manager, who was also producing, and we have a shooting date. Okay,
Wow.
everything's ready to roll. Well, get
Yeah.
this. Nala at the time had just released. They had financed the movie that Will Ferrell was in, where it was all Spanish speaking. I think it was called. I'm not a Spanish speaker, so it's like basically however you say in Spanish, "The House of My Father," "Mi
Right. Right.
Casa del Padre," or something like
Yeah.
that.
Sounds about right to
Close
me.
enough.
And then,
I
yeah.
forgive me, Spanish speakers. I'm sorry to butcher your language, but anyway,
Yeah.
that came out right when, like, literally a week or two before we were supposed to start filming the Boondoggle. Right?
Right.
Nobody went to see it. They started it in
Yeah.
LA with the Spanish, thinking that the Spanish speaking community here, because it's basically a Mexican soap opera, right?
But with Will Ferrell,
Will Ferrell. Yeah. If you
it's
haven't heard of it, this is why, Dave.
yeah. Well,
You
I
just
was
you just explain. Yeah.
yeah.
Will Ferrell, believe it or not, speaks Spanish fluently in real life.
Right.
And
Right. Right. Yep.
he
Yep.
wanted to do this campy, totally campy Mexican soap opera.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean, you even see like the cardboard props in the background. It's so low.
Right.
It's supposed to
Right.
be funny, like low budget
Right.
Mexican soap opera. It's actually funny. It's the kind of movie you watch with if you're drinking late night with your buddies and you just want
Right, but
something
I can
stupid to
I
laugh.
can kind of see just from a marketing perspective that this, it's not really the audience that we typically not, I far be it for me to say stay in your lane, but sometimes you can go so far out of your lane that you're just, yeah, this sounds like one of these things where you got to wonder, it was like a vanity project, but they didn't really think it through.
I think so. Well, and Will Ferrell's got his company's called Gary Sanchez Productions, which is a spoof
Right.
on his Spanish speaking. But anyway, so this movie tanks. They released it on just a handful of screens in LA to start because
Right.
the Mexicans here in LA would go see it. They
Right.
didn't,
Yeah.
and then they couldn't get any more distribution on it. So they basically lost 10 million bucks on this movie, which
Yeah.
was the
Yeah.
budget there. Or I'm guessing 10 million. Actually, I don't know that for sure.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
this was the type of budgets they were doing. And so now they panic on the Boondoggle,
Yeah.
and they told
Yeah.
Joe Roth, we want guaranteed distribution on this movie.
Yeah.
Well, as
Yeah.
you know, no one is going to give you guarantee. Now, Summit and Lionsgate had both expressed interest, and they
Right.
had
Right.
given a verbal, if this comes
Right.
out, we like the script, we like the package. If this comes out, decently, we will distribute. They both given
Yeah.
a letter of interest, but not a guarantee. No one is going
Right.
to
Right. Right.
until they see the finished product. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Roth tells them, well, that's that's not going to happen. That's
Yeah.
yeah. So they pulled the plug about a week or two before the
Oh, wow.
production. So
Wow.
everything that could have gone wrong, even with who would think that a Will Ferrell movie coming out a week or two
Y-
before we're supposed to start filming would kill our
Yeah. Stuff you can't, it's stuff you can't make up, couldn't have anticipated, had nothing
no.
to do with you at all. And that's, we love to be collaborative. That's who we are. You write, I want to take that script and I want to, produce it or direct it, and I want to work with the actors so that we can get your vision on, it's that great collaboration. But usually it is something from that you just can't even fathom that tanks show. And that's a great explanation of how that happens. Let's move ahead, Chris, to Earth Mom, because of course that's not just because I ended up getting involved in there. I'd like to, how did you know Scott Rosenfeld?
Through Dan Sullivan, the writer While You Were
Okay.
Sleeping. He
Oh,
introduced us actually on
right.
another project, a family
Yeah.
comedy. And that's how I first met Scott. And he,
Okay.
yeah, so
Yeah. And what's give the the elevator pitch for Earth Mom? Just so
oh
people
man.
who, what would
Yeah,
that be?
it's been a while. Let me
Yeah,
let's
it
see.
doesn't have to be word for word, but if for folks who are watching, what would you say was the crux of Earth?
A typical suburban family finds out that mom was abducted by aliens years ago, and that the older siblings who have to move back home in their 30s because of financial circumstances find out that they have two younger siblings who are half alien because mom was abducted years ago. And now the family has to figure out a way to live together, aliens and non-aliens.
Right. And then Space Dad decides to make an appearance and reintroduce himself to Earth Mom and his kids, and that's where I was very fortunate in that you cast me to be that Space Dad guy, Zaslav, Zaslav, Zaslav,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and as we mentioned at the top of this episode, I just had a blast doing that. And and as you mentioned, as yeah, correctly show, it was received very well by those people that saw it, by real audience members who saw it. However, once again, it didn't end up making a sale. But I have to tell you in particular, I really enjoyed the end product. I remember when we made it and then waiting for it to get done because there was all kinds of special effects that needed to be added to it. And I thought when I finally saw it that, and I'm only in it like for like the last few minutes of it, but the rest of it, I thought the cast and crew were fantastic, and I thought that it was very well written. I laughed a lot during that thing, and I thought, you know, I know a lot of pilots, a lot of comedy pilots who weren't nearly as good as this one was that got sold and and went to series. So in something like that, not and we're not here to like grill anybody or why, but just as kind of like what were we able to, only because I don't know, I'm just curious, were you able to like march that around to networks and things like that and get meetings? How
It
did
was Yeah, it was tough. I know Scott gave it to his contact at Amazon, and the timing of Hollywood, the guy had moved on like a week or two before we gave it
yeah,
to him. He was
yeah,
receptive to taking a look,
yeah,
and then that was a bad break, because that's one of the main reasons I made it. I knew Scott could get it
yeah,
to Amazon, and
yeah,
who would think that the guy's going to clean out his desk, 2 weeks
yeah,
before? Again, timing,
yeah,
brutal. I took it
yeah.
to AFI American Film or AFM American Film Market,
AFM, right,
and I just hustled around meeting people and pitching it
right,
to people,
right,
and got a few meetings. And
right,
the typical feedback, well, this is really just a demo. We don't want a demo. It's a good demo, but we need
right.
something with a Nick Cage or Julia Roberts, something that we're going to
Again, that goes
invest
back
in.
to what you were saying before, was they want they want A-list stars attached so that they can go into the room and sell it with the A-list star. That's they need, that A-list star. So that's, yeah, and we certainly didn't have A-list, lots of talent, that being on one list or another, C-list, uh, speaking for myself, um, uh, uh, they, they're name commodity. You turn into a commodity, beyond, which is beyond your talent. Sometimes you don't have any talent, but you're a commodity that can be sold. So anyway, it was just a privilege to work on that with you, and I just thank you for getting me involved in that. And it is, wherever my demos or reels can be seen on IMDb or YouTube or whatever, it's there because I'm so proud of that the work that we did on that show. So,
Hey, you steal the show with that entrance because your spaceship crashes in, and then you come in with that. And the beautiful our special effects guys did a great job with that
they did
blue glow
great.
and the smoke when you come in through that door and that
Yep,
space helmet and all that.
yep,
And then we
yep.
find out your spaceship crashed. You're gonna be living with the family, and then you're the last guy that dad wants around. The guy who seduced
Oh
his
yeah,
wife and
oh
impregnated
yeah.
her with alien babies. And but here's the thing, Dave. This I haven't given up on this series. You know, things will sit on a shelf for a few years. Last
You
year, a
bet.
producer that I work with a lot says, you know, I'm looking. He's got their company's in Spain. He goes, I'm
Yeah.
gonna try to get this made for Spanish Netflix. Well, you know, and you guys
Hey,
obviously be recast and all, but you guys still get a piece. You know, I think you'll get a producer credit and you'll get a whatever our contract is. You guys are going to get paid if this happens, and
wow. Okay.
you
I hope
never
this.
know when
I've
something
got it on
finds a home.
recording now. I've got it recorded now that you said that. So that's what this whole episode was about. Was me capturing that. Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
Hey, it was half a percentage point.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Somewhere I think I still have that contract. But thank you for that consideration. So are you able to talk now as we kind of wrap things up a little bit, Chris? Are you able to talk about, because I know that you have, and you know, and you I've been fortunate that you've shared some information with me about a potential future project. Is that something that you can share on this forum, or if you want to really generalize it?
Yeah, yeah. I'll
What's
generalize. You're
next?
trying to stay at an hour, right? We're pushing an
Yeah,
hour.
yeah, we've got a few more minutes here.
Okay, yeah, I can summarize this pretty quick. Caitlin's Wheel, the novel I told you about, that was with
Mm,
Bancroft Press. I
right,
was on Bancroft Press's website because I was checking them out when I was about to sign the deal. And again, they're small, but I
right.
noticed that they had a book from a Seinfeld writer, former Seinfeld writer, Peter Millman, who was like the writer of Seinfeld. He wrote,
Yes, know the
you
name
know,
very well.
oh yeah, I mean, big time. He was like
He-
there for 8 seasons and wrote
Absolutely.
probably close.
In my mind, in my mind, you got Larry David, you got Jerry Seinfeld, and I believe the name that was emblazoned in my brain beyond those two were Peter
Peter
Melman.
Millman. Yeah.
Yep.
So I was like, wow. Because, you know, after Larry David left the show, it was Peter Millman and Seinfeld were the producers of that show. They were running
Yeah.
the show. And then
Right.
Peter left to go do his own show with another network. I forgot the name of it. But
Right.
anyway, I'm looking at this and I'm like, I asked my publisher, I said, did anyone ever option the rights to that for a TV series or movie? He goes, surprisingly, no. I said, are they available? He goes, well, Peter and I share the rights, which is how he does his deal with authors. It's a 50-50 share. And he
Right.
says, I'm game with you adapting this if you want to give it a go, but it'd be up to Peter as well. So he gives me Peter's email address and I reach out to him and Peter instantly responded, yeah, if you want to take a shot at it, no problem. So I said, great. And we went and met and we walked through how to structure this thing. And you know, he let me do the heavy hitting on the adaptation, but he was there to, you know, consult on all the structure and all that. And we worked on we had a few more meetings and got our pilot episode written together.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
brought on a producer that Peter liked. I introduced him. He liked him a lot. Jan Fisher. He's the guy with a company in Spain with Roger Corby. But they do a lot of American stuff too. He and Roger
Right. Right.
Corby. Um, so right before pandemic, we had gotten it to Rappaport, Michael Rappaport's manager at Grillstein, and
Fabulous actor.
Yeah, Rappaport liked it a lot. We zoomed with him, and then
Yeah.
he's on board, and it's a Jewish American comedy, and he really likes it. And then the pandemic happened, and
Right. Right.
and now we're back in the industry, and then this thing happening in Israel with all the and all this anti-Semitism. The timing's a little weird.
Yes.
We've
Yes.
been told to
Yes.
kind of maybe just hold off a little bit until some of this
Yeah.
cools down,
Well,
which I don't
yeah.
agree with. I think why hide from hate? I
Right.
think the
Right.
best way to take it on is, especially with comedy, because it
Right.
unites
Right.
people and it humanizes people. Because you see, this
Right.
Jewish
Right.
family is dealing with the same crap as every other family.
Right. Right.
Our
Yeah.
show actually has an anti-Semitic element, which is
Right.
the comedy, because it's the guy. Basically, the premise of the novel is the main character is a Jewish podiatrist in Long Island, where they have to follow the Orthodox rules. You can't walk, you can't drive or use electronics after
Right.
dark or
Right.
Friday night or whatever, which is what's the term? You're Jewish, David. You know the
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm a Reformed
Sh-
Jew, but
Shabbos?
Shabbos. Yeah, you would say
Shabbos. I'm
Shabbos or
sorry.
Shabbos. It's yeah. So from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown, if you're, Orthodox or great Orthodox, Hasidic, that sort of thing, then yeah, you eschew anything that resembles any kind of work. Um, but they've come up with some interesting workarounds. The electronic timer to turn on and off lights and TV,
Oh, okay.
things like that. Yeah, but again, I guess you all have to, whatever, now I'm not judgmental. I'm
Oh,
not
no, no, no,
Orthodox.
no, no.
I'm
But
not Orthodox anything, but anyway, I just think that's more humorous than anything else. Is like, so are you really Orthodox then? Are you really keeping Shabbos if you got the timer to turn on The Godfather at 8 a.m. on Channel 4? But let me just interject that Michael Rappaport, I just started watching Life and Beth. You mentioned both Amy Schumer and Michael Rappaport. Life and Beth is a show on Hulu, starring Amy Schumer, and Michael Rappaport plays her father when she was in flashbacks when she was a young girl. And he plays this very similar kind of a character to what we're referencing here, and he's good at everything.
he's
He's good
good.
at
Yeah,
everything.
I love the guy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Copland.
absolutely.
Did you ever see Copland? I believe it
Yes.
was, yeah. I mean, he was great in that as like this dumber than a stump cop. And I think Sylvester Stallone was in that, and Bobby De Niro, and I can call him Bobby because I don't know him. But 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 uh yeah, anyway. Yeah, so anyway, so continue. I apologize,
Yeah,
but
oh,
you
no worries, no worries. So anyway, Peter's novel is basically it's a parody of this because it's based on his sister. She lives in Long
right,
Island, and they actually anyone can do business in that neighborhood, but you have to
right,
follow their rules or you're
right,
out. I mean, they'll
right,
stop doing
right,
business with you. You got to play ball.
right,
So
right,
that's already set up, and the main character is not Orthodox at all. I mean, he's
right,
very Jewish,
right.
but he's not Orthodox. And so
Yes.
so he loses track of time and he has to walk home in the freezing cold from his
Yeah.
office. And he's already in a bad mood because of that. And then he steps on a bottle of kosher, Mossad kosher horseradish and badly twists his ankle. And in a fit of rage,
Funny.
picks up the bottle and throws it through the shop window and it shatters. And the owner of the store is one of the Orthodox leader in the community who suspects a hate crime of
Oh,
anti-Semitism.
that's great. That's
Total
great.
Seinfeld type of setup. Although the book itself is not Seinfeldish, it's more about the family
Right.
element and the family
Right.
drama and all.
Right.
So here we are. We're talking about and so the whole community and the media gets involved. And who is this?
Yeah.
And they arrest somebody who
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
an anti-Semite, but he
Oh my.
didn't do the crime though. And
Right.
that guy happens to be the client of his wife, who is
Right.
representing him as an artist. And so
Right.
crazy
Right.
premise. It's all funny. We do address
Oh,
hate in this country, but it's done
yeah.
to, and we love this family. Anyone, it's like, and so for me for people in this industry to tell us, oh wait, because we're hearing about anti-Semitism in the press and it's kind of a
Right.
touchy subject. No,
Right.
this is
Right.
the time to make it, and it's so
Right.
frustrating.
Right.
But
Right.
we're
And I understand.
still, we're still waiting to hear back from some other
Yeah.
people. We've
Right.
got, I
Right.
won't jinx it, but
Right.
anyway, that's where we're at.
Right.
So
Right. And I do, as I honestly, and I've never even thought, this is not a subject matter I've ever dealt with as a creator, as a creative, but I genuinely can see both sides of this story. It's a sticky wicket right now. But at the same time, I mean, as artists, that's where you want to be out there and make your statement, and be bold, even in something, you know, uh, something meant as an entertainment more so than a work of art. Not that comedy, I mean, good comedy is great comedy is great comedy because it is a work. I mean,
yes,
there's no
yes.
two ways about it. But I can understand the suits, if you will, even if they don't necessarily wear suits anymore. But I can understand the suits having a little bit of trepidation. Um, but listen, you're very, very tenacious. that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk with you, because I've known of your tenacity, and now I've known, I think I've known you for, 7 or 8 years,
Yeah,
and yeah, and all I've known, in addition to your talent as a writer, is your tenacity, and this is why I wanted to talk to you. And what this episode ends up being, which I'm really happy about, is a real learning opportunity for people who want to bring their writing to the industry and know what it's like from from an insider's perspective. And you have given us that on this episode, Christopher Brian Halvorson, or Chris as we know you. So I want to thank you very much, Chris. First of all, it's great to reconnect with you, because in these few years, as I've worked on very closely on projects with people. You're a little family for a while, like we were on Earth Mom, but it feels like family at the time. But then you all go your separate ways, and next thing you know, it's years later, and someone that you were really close with, because you're off working in different geographic regions and in different projects, even at the same time, you just don't have time to get together. So
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
Dave,
this is
you living in Burbank made it impossible to get together. That's such a long in LA traffic from West Side. Are you kidding?
Are you
Yeah.
to that point? I would
Mm.
tell. I did not make my agent happy when I would say, living in Burbank, I would say, please do not get me any auditions in Santa Monica, because when you do, it's usually on a Friday at 4 p.m.
Oh, yeah.
I said,
Yeah.
please. So on the one hand, I was okay when, and I'm not a fan of auditioning like this, the way it's gone to. Auditioning is now all virtual, self tapes as they call them. So that made it a little bit easier to do it, when I didn't really care geographically where it took place. But when we were still auditioning face to face, inevitably I would get, a text or an email from my agent saying, get to Santa Monica. It's at Arizona and Third, like, right there by the promenade, 4 o'clock on a Friday. And I was like, it's going to take me 90 minutes to 2 hours to get there. I'm going to be there for 2 minutes, and then it's going to be 6 o'clock on a Friday going from Santa Monica to Burbank.
Oh, yeah.
I said, this is
Yeah.
going to be a 6 hour investment.
Yeah.
So my
Yeah.
standing edict to any representative that I ever had was, if I have to audition in Santa Monica, the names Marty, Francis, or Steven, as in
Yeah. Yeah.
Scorsese, Coppola, or
Yeah.
Spielberg,
Yeah.
those names better be on the list there, because if
Yeah.
they're not, that
Yeah.
Dave is going to stay home.
Yeah.
I'll be at the
Understood.
I'll be at the gym, but anyway,
Understood.
see, this is great, Chris, because these are the kind of fun stories and exchanges that I would have loved to have with you on set, but of course we were working, and and
Yeah.
and and and,
Yeah.
and obviously focus there takes place, but anyway, let's make sure we do have a conversation again. That's just us guys talking, because I'd really like to catch up. Although, thank you for
Likewise.
sharing what you've shared. Of course, of course,
Likewise. Yeah. I
yeah,
consider you a kindred spirit, which I thought so right off the bat.
absolutely. Thank you, and
Yeah.
I take that to heart, and it means a lot to me, because that's why we're here right now, because I thought, if I'm going to do this thing, I want to know more about Chris, and I want to know what your story was, and it's lived up to everything that I thought that it might be. It's a really interesting, one of a kind story. You're like me. We're still here. We're still doing it, and we're going to
That's right.
continue to do it. You
That's
know,
right. Yep.
so I wish you nothing but further success.
Likewise. Keep me
In your
posted
career.
on your projects as well, Dave.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So at this time, what I'll do, I always have trouble with this. This has kind of got, at least in my mind, and some of the guests I've had, because this is when I remember that we're actually on a Zoom, just like a regular Zoom. This isn't anything, in terms of technology. So I always look for there it is, the red button that ends it. So thank you, Chris. I'm going to press the red button, and then the second red button comes up and says, really, Dave? Do you really want to end it? So thank you, Chris Halvorson, for being my guest today, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, Dave. All
Take
right.
care of yourself.
You
Okay.
too.
All right.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
again. Bye-bye.